What's going on, everybody? Instinctual in the building. What's going on, everybody? Instinctual is here. Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm Instinctual, aka Dan, and it's nice to meet you if you've never seen this channel before. I know for a while I was doing some different content, specifically Pokemon Go related videos, but now this is my first video that's going to be directed towards mental health concerns. And my name's Dan, and this is for your mental health. Hey everybody, Dan here, and this is for your mental health. So I have started a new series on the channel, as you may have seen in a previous video. I talked about my changing of topics from Pokemon Go related videos to now mental health. And so this is episode 1 of that particular series. We're starting with what is anxiety. And the reason I'm doing these videos is because I have a great love of the cause of mental health and getting people to understand the finer points of it, to basically know that you're not alone in the world, other people face the same things that you do. You know, you can get through these anxious times in your life, depressive times in your life, you know, dealing with suicidal thoughts, anything of that sort. We can look for help, but we can find ways to make the situation better. And so my aim in this series is to try and do that, is to try to put things out there in a very positive way. We'll see how it goes. This is the first episode. You know, I don't have a ton of structure or plans for this. I'm just kind of, you know, going with what I have and seeing where it goes. So let's go ahead and let's talk more about what anxiety is. And according to Wikipedia, anxiety is an emotion that's characterized by an unpleasant state of inner turmoil, often accompanied by nervous behaviors such as pacing back and forth, somatic complaints, which include those are physical symptoms like chest pain, dizziness, fatigue, and insomnia, as well as rumination, which would be a constant feedback loop within the mind of the causes and consequences of one's distress instead of possible solutions. Yeah, that's a pretty standard definition of anxiety right there. Yeah, it's definitely, if we're gonna break this down a little bit, it's definitely unpleasant, you know, when you go through anxiety. You know, it's not something that, you know, you want to sit in for a long time as it stews around within you if you go through particular instances of it. It's a state of inner turmoil, so it definitely is something that comes from the inside of you. We're all more comfortable in a sort of more a normal zone where things are just kind of, you know, going well, flying by, and you don't really feel as within the turmoil as you do when you are feeling anxiety in this way. But yeah, the nervous behavior, you know, I definitely have seen this before, pacing back and forth, you know, when people are anxious. You know, I've done that myself many times when I'm dealing with things. The somatic complaints, the physical symptoms, chest pain, dizziness, fatigue, and insomnia. You know, I don't know if I've really felt, you know, chest pain from anxiety so much. Maybe other people have where I haven't, but that's not really something I've dealt with as much. Dizziness, maybe a little bit, you know, just because there's so many things going on in your head at once that it definitely is very dizzying at times, so I could definitely see that. Fatigue, so it is very exhausting, dealing with things that are, you know, going on inside of you that you're worried about for the future, you know, which can be tiring. That can be very tiring to continually think about the causes and the consequences of your distress rather than, you know, the possible solutions. And lack of sleep, insomnia too. All those things, you know, have impacted me, and I know have definitely impacted other people as well in their different situations. There's a stigma around it, you know, when people say, oh, I'm feeling very anxious. There's some people that will just kind of brush it off, like, oh, you know, they're just a worrisome kind of individual. You know, they should just get over it right away. But it doesn't always work out that way. It's not really that simple for a lot of people. You know, it takes time to kind of come down from this sort of delirious state of anxiety where you are met with these unpleasant states of inner turmoil. Yeah, anxiety is definitely something that can come, just like that in a snap of the fingers. You are all of a sudden, there. You're in an anxious state. One decision you make or one thing that you see that has happened, all of a sudden it clicks something in the brain, and then it happens. It starts up. It has begun. I've been there many times, definitely, and a lot of times you're just waiting for it to kind of pass. Just to ride out the anxiety, and hopefully eventually face it in the end. So, that's always a solution I try to go for when I'm faced with anxious situations. But let's talk about something now a little different. So the types of anxieties. That would be the next thing. Common types include mathematical anxiety, which basically just means like you are anxious about your mathematical skills. I work at an escape room, so I actually kind of see that a lot, strangely, because when you're trying to escape a room, you have to deal with equations, and when you say that to people, they're like, oh well, I don't know if I'm going to be any good at this, because there are a fair amount of people in the world that are anxious about their math skills. They don't think they can cut it because maybe in school they had trouble with different equations, whatever classes they were in, they didn't do so well. So a lot of people that I've seen here at the escape room definitely have displayed some mathematical anxiety when I mention you got to do some equations to get out. So I do see that one a lot. Stage fright is the next one. So that's going to be anything where you are trying to perform in front of an audience. And, that's something that I do pretty regularly now, once again going back to my escape room experiences. I'm constantly giving the rules to a large group of people in front of me, giving the story, and it's something that I was, I think more prepared for because I have done haunted house work as an actor. I also went to school for film, so I do have some experience with that communication degree in school. So yeah, I feel like I was more prepared than most for that kind of anxiety, the stage fright. Although I will say that when I was doing open mic nights in Wooddale, my former hometown, I would go and play my little folky guitar. I would just be on stage, and I would go play. And the first time I did that, I was extremely nervous. I got on stage, and I just, I felt like I was sort of freezing up a little bit, and I was kind of questioning, like, why am I up here? Should I even be doing this? All these kind of little questions kind of coming up in the mind. That's sort of the rumination that's mentioned in the definition. So, the constant feedback of the causes and consequences. And so, luckily that night I was able to overcome that anxiety and actually play the one song that I knew, the one song that I had written on stage. There were probably a smattering of people that were drinking their coffee or whatever, maybe, 10 people at the most. But yeah, I did it. I definitely was able to confront that stage fright in that moment and be better off by doing so. So, that's one that I've definitely faced head on. There's also test anxiety, social anxiety, and stranger anxiety, which test anxiety, of course, would be, being anxious about an upcoming test. You're not sure if you studied enough. Test anxiety, yeah, that one's not too complicated. You're just, you have a test to take, and, you're worried about not passing it. Like, if you don't pass this test, what are the possible consequences of that you're going to have to deal with? So, that would make someone very anxious, absolutely. I personally did try to, study enough to where I felt like I was confident when I was taking a test. So, that was my strategy to combat test anxiety. Try to study as much as I could beforehand. I was a pretty good student in school, so for me, tests weren't always the most daunting task, I suppose. But, for a lot of people, they were. Absolutely. Social anxiety is another one. So, you're anxious about, being around other people. That one, I think I can attest to when I was younger. I was a little shy growing up. That was maybe a cute version of it, but But I definitely felt kind of nervous around the people, especially older kids when I was walking around school. So yeah, I was not really that social. I kind of kept to myself, and I guess I was a bit anxious about talking to people, whether they be older, whether they be girls, or what have you. But yeah, those things I definitely think helped me back a little bit. I had my core group of friends growing up, but I think I had to grow into the person I am today, where being around people, going out to concerts or conventions, different public social events, it's not as bad anymore. It's not as bad as it used to be when I was younger and I didn't have the confidence maybe that I do now. So, but social anxiety is still very prevalent. It's a very big issue, where a lot of people are used to being on their phones, being in front of a computer, and not actually being in a one-on-one conversation, like you'd have with someone sitting right next to you. So even this, I'm talking to a camera. I'm not actually talking to you personally, but it's what we got. It's currently the situation that we have here with YouTube and different online platforms. But you would hope that this isn't your only source of human interaction. I know for me, I've watched a lot of YouTubers in the past that have gotten me through those tough times. You feel like you're very alone, and it's good to feel like you belong. It really is. Even if you do feel socially anxious and you don't want to go out into large groups of people, even if it's a common interest, like going to your favorite concert or going to your favorite convention, dressing up as your favorite character, those things are a lot of fun, but you have to put yourself out there to do those things, so social anxiety can definitely be a blockade to, all that type of joy. Experience of being around other people, of enjoying each other's company, and growing as an individual. So, that one definitely is a huge factor in a lot of people's lives, no doubt. There is stranger anxiety, which, from what I've read, is more accustomed to being dealt with by children, because when children are around people they don't know, they get very tentative, very hesitant to approach strangers, which I guess that kind of makes sense. A lot of it actually is the physical prominence of a larger person, of an adult, will cause children to back away, to get very anxious around other people that aren't their parents. And I think I've seen that a lot. I'm sure you've seen that a lot. A lot of kids do that. That's a normal thing. That's a normal thing for children to go through. So stranger anxiety is actually kind of part of the growing pains of a child growing up, which I didn't actually know that until I read up a little more on it. So that's kind of interesting. Also, we have some specific phobias. So this is a type of anxiety where you have a specific thing that you're afraid of, which could be fear of heights, which is acrophobia, or fear of the dark, which is nyctophobia. So these are things that would cause you to be quite anxious. If you were to think to yourself, well, maybe you're going to face these things. If you're going to maybe go up the Willis Tower here in the Chicagoland area, and you had a fear of heights, that whole day you would probably be very, very anxious, because you would know what's coming next. You would have that in the back of your mind, like I'm going to be going up this building, and I'm going to have to deal with heights, things that are very tall, and I'll be up on a higher level of elevation, and so that's going to make you feel very anxious probably if you have acrophobia, fear of heights, fear of the dark. Obviously, once again, coming back to my escape room experience, people ask sometimes, is it dark in there? Because some people don't like the dark very much. They'll get very anxious by being in a situation where the light is very minimal. And that probably comes from past experiences, maybe as a child when they were growing up. Maybe they were facing issues where that reminds them of a certain situation when they were very young and they didn't have a lot of light. It was a dark moment, and also it was a dark environment at the same time. I understand. That makes a lot of sense. So so these these fears, these specific phobias, these are things that definitely affect a lot of people, and there's a laundry list of different phobias, not just those two, but there's a ton out there that a lot of people have to face on a daily basis. And there's no one wearing a sign that says I am afraid of heights or I am afraid of the dark. There's no one wearing a sign that says those things, and so it can be very difficult to kind of figure out who's afraid of this and who's anxious about that. It can be very difficult because something just kind of pop up out of nowhere. It's really a situational thing. Maybe it wouldn't happen until you actually were in the dark with someone, or you were on a very high elevation with someone. So it can kind of come out at the maybe the least opportune moments, for sure. But but these things do happen, and when they come, you got to deal with it. You definitely do. As far as my phobias go, I think I'm maybe somewhat agoraphobic, which basically means that I would be afraid of situations where there isn't a clear exit from it. So that might be partly why I don't like driving very much, because driving, you are in a little metal box with wheels, and you're going, maybe far distances into the highway, and the highway you can't just jump out the car and be like, well, I don't like this situation anymore. Out I go. You can't really do that. You can't really do that because you'll probably get terribly injured if you try to leap out of a vehicle when it's moving down the highway. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. So yeah, I don't own a car. I've never owned a car in my life. So that's that could be related to agoraphobia. That's possible. That may also explain my somewhat anxious nature around elevators, because elevators are very closed off spaces as well. But that one came to mind when I saw it. I'm like, yeah, I think there might be something to that one. So yeah, those are the different types of anxiety. There are more extreme types. So we're talking about like panic attacks and post-traumatic stress disorder, which would occur after a certain trauma, like military combat, sexual assault, natural disasters, things of this nature. So those are on the more extreme end of anxiety, and so those things can definitely happen, to anybody in any situation. If they were facing something that was so extreme that would cause them to react in that way, I mean, yeah, absolutely, that would totally happen. Luckily, for me, I don't think I've ever actually felt those things before. I definitely have, I feel like, gotten close to those things, like in certain situations, like job situations, where you feel like things aren't going your way, and certain people, the way they treat you, the way these certain people treat you, the way you feel about that, having to be around them all the time because they are your boss, or they work at the same place you do, and so you have to kind of to deal. Those are times when you're trying to make money, you're trying to survive, you're trying to get the next meal, pay the next rent payment. You feel like you have to put yourself in these situations because you don't have a choice. And that's a really scary place to be. It really is. Because that means you are willingly putting yourself into these very, very anxious situations because you feel like you have to, because you feel like you need to make money, and you feel like you need to feed yourself. And this is the only way you can see doing that, in your current job situation. So, I've dealt with stuff like that before, and it's definitely hard. Those are hard times, and to leave those situations is a brave thing to do. It really is. So, if you're struggling with your own job, the people around you, you feel like you are being very anxious around people that are harming you emotionally. I mean, that's a place no one should be, but a lot of people are there, unfortunately. And, that could cause panic attacks because of all that kind of building up into, to one very large reaction to it. And that's unfortunately, something that's very common in today's modern society, panic attacks, and, the post-traumatic stress disorder. Those are things that I think are a little more specific because they deal with military combat, sexual assault, natural disasters. Those are things that I think are very clear, as far as what's causing the anxiety in that particular moment. You can trace it all back to what happened from those very situations. And with panic attacks, it could be a collection of things. It's hard to really say, so it's kind of harder to, I would imagine, to better understand where that's coming from and to try to, deal with that in a very positive way. Those are the more extreme ones. Another one that's interesting is existential anxiety, where a person questions whether their life has meaning, a purpose, or value. That's something that I think I face more when things are good, like seemingly good, when things are just going pretty well, and you have a moment where you're just sitting there and you just kind of wonder to yourself, well, like, what is any of this? Like, what does any of this mean? Why are we here? So that's something that, once again, is very common, but it doesn't really have a clear answer, because it's really a question that is answered in different ways, whether it's religion or some other meaning or purpose, value that you find in your own life, something that you latch on to that makes you feel stronger, right? So existential anxiety, that's one that that can be really difficult to deal with, because it just kind of hits you. It's like you realize, what's the meaning? What's the meaning behind anything that you do? So I think the best way I've dealt with that is to make videos like this, to really have a purpose and keep going out there and having a voice, and talking about whatever it is that interests me, whatever it is that I think I'm passionate about, and it could maybe help people. And that's why we're here. That's why we're here talking about this. So those are some of the different types of anxiety right there. So I think I've answered the question, in some way, what is anxiety? At least on a very kind of base level. You can go very much deeper into this subject, but I think for episode 1 of For Your Mental Health, this is a good start. This is a good start to start answering some of these mental health questions that we face today in a very, very strong way. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have faced anxiety in your life, what type of anxiety have you faced among these different types, and how have you handled it in your own life as well? So that would be awesome if you could comment below. Just talk about one instance of anxiety that you faced that you felt like was very overwhelming, but maybe you were able to deal with it in a certain way that someone else probably wouldn't think of, and that might be able to help others as well. So please do that. Please do that. That would be really cool. So that's episode 1, and it's For Your Mental Health. So my name is Dan, aka Instinctual. Thanks for watching. As always, follow your instincts, and peace out.